Guys, good Monday morning. My name is Jerry Miller. Thank you kindly for joining us. We are live in downtown Charlottesville on Real Talk with Keith Smith. One of the things you'll notice in about 30 seconds is Keith Smith is not here. He and the Smith family, extended Smith family, on vacation in St. Martin. But have no fear, Michael Guthrie is here. We have a multi-award-winning broadcaster on set. You know him from Real Estate Matters. You may know him from the Kettlebell and the Salvation Army. You may know him as a die-hard orange and blue fan. He bleeds orange and blue just like yours truly. You may know him as a champion of Charlottesville, Albemarle County, and Central Virginia. And Michael Guthrie has brought a business colleague and a friend with him in Jay Domenic. Before we get started, we'll give some props to Judah Wickhauer, the man behind the camera, who allows us to do the easy work, which is being ourselves and doing what we love, which is talking about real estate in front of microphones and cameras. Judah, if you can go to the studio camera, and I'll pass the mic to Michael Guthrie. My friend, thank you for joining us. It's good to have you back. Should we throw a little sports in there before we talk real estate with that Florida State news from yesterday? I mean, I thought it was a travesty.
Yeah, I'm actually dressed in black today, symbolic of Florida State's colors. I'm not a huge Florida State fan, although I do have a good friend who's a coach there. Obviously there were 6 teams that were vying for those 4 spots, but I just don't understand how a team that goes undefeated, I think beat 3 top 25 teams, won their last couple of games with defense, given the fact they didn't have their quarterback. I just don't understand how they don't end up in the group. And shared with you earlier, if you are on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, RG3 tweeted out, I thought, a really, really good, articulate explanation as to what the heck happened here. And, we can all talk about the fact that next year it'll be different because they're 12, but that doesn't help Florida State this year at all. And I was surprised. When Georgia lost Alabama, obviously I felt like they were out of the equation, unfortunately. And that's the really crazy thing, is that Florida State on New Year's Day may play the best team in the country,
right?
And not even for the national championship. So it's
go into the game undefeated.
Yeah,
which is bananas.
Yeah.
Kevin Yancey's given Michael Guthrie props, and he does the hashtag ACC Bowl boycott. Logan Wells-Colelo giving Michael Guthrie and Jay Domenic some props. We'll get Jay Domenic in the mix. His reputation precedes itself. It's sterling and fantastic. This man moves mountains in the mortgage business. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, how about some introduction to Jay Domenic, the man, and before we get into the numbers, Jay Domenic.
You mean my bio, my life story?
Anything you want, my friend.
Your win-loss record at UVA.
Oh boy, yeah. Go way back. Well, I've been in Charlottesville a long time. I've been in the mortgage business since 1987.
Wow.
I was, but I came to Virginia as a student in 1979, so a long time ago there, and stayed in Charlottesville for the most part. My wife and I moved to the Lehigh Valley of Pennsylvania for a little bit, but she wanted to come back to Charlottesville, and frankly, Allentown versus
it's a no-brainer.
Charlottesville, it's like, let's go. We've spent a winter up there, it's miserable. So, I found myself in the mortgage business. I've loved it ever since. I've enjoyed it. I've met a lot of people. I've helped a lot of people. It's changing so much over the many years. I was joking at the Greene County Chamber of Commerce that I've been doing this so long, I've become the guy that always says back in the day. So I'm always comparing something to what things used to be. Is like, this is the way it is now, but back in the day we used to do this. So
you don't even know back in the day, brother.
Oh well, it's been a while. You precede me by a couple years, but not too much. Don't act like you're that old.
So I'll get out of your way, gentlemen. You guys are the experts. How do you characterize today's real estate market?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we want to do today, right? We want to talk about the real estate market. Keith and you guys do this a lot, but I think it's important for people to just continually get a feel for where things are. And where I come from is, trying to give a little bit of alternative perspectives as to what's happening out there. The standard, how many less homes sold in the quarter, and all those kind of things. Those are all really good, but at the end of the day, it's about how it's impacting people, right? And one of the things I've been talking about, on my show and just throughout the community is, there's a real trickle-down effect in regards to what's going on, right? And we'll get into the interest rates, and yeah, it's great that the interest rates are coming down, but in some ways, that's exacerbating what the next couple, 3 months are going to look like, from my perspective, and we'll get into that. But from the trickle-down aspect of what I'm talking about is when you look at the less number of homes sold in 2023 compared to 2022. I think the last number I saw was like a 2,000 number difference, right? That's a lot of homes. When you think of a median price of $350, or if we take out new construction, $320, $330, whatever, times that's a lot of volume. One, that's impacting realtors, right, from a standpoint of their livelihood, right? And then, but people forget, you don't stop there. You stop at the mortgage guys, yeah, and gals. You stop at the title companies. 2,000 less homes, that's 2,000 less closings.
Home inspectors, appraisers.
Home inspectors, appraisers, insurance people. All of these people, there are 2,000 less homes that people have not, Lowe's, Best Buy. I mean, it just goes on and on in regards to how much this impacts things. And so, yes, we understand what the Fed has done and why they're doing it, but Lawrence Yun was here 3 months ago at the Charlottesville Area Association of Realtors, and I asked him the question, do they get it? Do they understand that this isn't just about interest rates, this is about people's livelihoods, and when it goes down all the way down there, that's to the person on the floor at Lowe's or the floor at Best Buy or whatever the case may be. And he said, the problem is the Fed, it's all about the numbers. They're just tunnel vision in the numbers, and hopefully they're thinking about, people, but in their work, it's probably not impacting their salaries. It's probably not impacting their ability to live the life, that they want to live. But for a lot of people, we've all heard that, we've seen that bumper sticker, and, again, we're going to probably see it again here soon, with realtors saying, just give me one more good up market. I promise I won't waste what I made in the last one, right? Because this kind of came pretty quick, even though it's been a year or so, right? It came pretty quick. The brakes the brakes were put on in a very quick way that I think was abrupt and a lot of people hadn't planned for.
Betsy Hill Nugent, welcome to the program. Dean Russell, hello. Cindy over at Keswick, welcome to the show. Jay Domenic, jump in the mix, and he's talking the supply chain of real estate. I mean, you're talking advertisers, you're talking the Fine Properties magazines. I mean, who said this? It was, I think it was Lisa Sturdivant, the chief economist of Bright. The number 2 driver for economic GDP in the Commonwealth was real estate. Government contracting was 1. Real estate was number 2. So this is clearly impacting communities with many different layers to the onion. We'll start open-ended. Your thoughts on what Michael said and where we may be going.
And Jay, let me give you one quick add on to that. You talk about the fact that it's not just about the 2,000 homes for you. Talk about the fact that how many of those homes, because of the area that we're in, were bought for cash for whatever reason, and that leaves you out of the lenders out of that equation as well.
Right. The number of cash buyers starting in 2020, when things got really crazy, jumped considerably. And the reason behind it was nobody was willing to accept a contract saying, I'll buy your house, but I have to sell my house first. So people were coming up with all sorts of ways to come up with the cash. Where all this cash came from, who knows? But primarily it was people tapping into retirement plans, early inheritance, we'll call it, gifts, liquidating investments, stuff like that, because they had to win the contract, and those contracts were getting crazy as far as the bidding goes. I've seen some crazy things that I would never recommend somebody buy. I use this example a few times because it's relatively recent, but I had a young lady who was trying to buy a house in the Fry Spring area, and the house was offered a little under $400,000. She offered like $460,000, escalation clauses up to $460,000, 3-week closing, no home inspection, and if the appraisal came in at the asking price instead of the final price, she was still going to buy the house. And she did not even win that contract. I mean,
Man.
what else do you have to do? But cash is king, so if an investor or somebody comes in and says, look, I'll pay cash for it, then sellers typically want to jump on that.
Keith gave us this stat. I'll throw it to you. Year to date, existing, not new construction, but existing homes, anything 850,000 and above, roughly half of the homes, 850,000 and above, were cash buyers.
Yeah, and I think the other thing in regards to what Jay said, he's absolutely right. To win the contract, so a lot of parents were paying cash, and then the kid having a year from now the kids will refinance and do their own thing or whatever. So that added into it. You've got people that want to be in Charlottesville, they live in San Francisco, New York, whatever, where they've made big money, right? Sold their houses and have moved here so that they can pay cash, and they're in the financial stratosphere, if you will, that they don't care what it's valued at. They just want that, and they're going to pay cash. Good example, my brother, this was years ago, but he sold his house in Arlington for a lot of money, little Sears Craftsman home in South Arlington, sold it and went to Richmond and paid cash for a house that was almost half of what, same square footage, but almost half, not quite, but almost half of what it was that he sold his house in Arlington for. So you have people like that are making big money in these other places, and they come here. And let's be real, this is a very inflated real estate market. The prices that people pay here in normal cities, towns of our size, we are so off the chart because of that, because people are coming here and buying homes as a second home, as a home that they're going to retire to or whatever, that it makes it really tough. That's why this whole conversation in our marketplace about affordability and availability is so critical, because there are things that people don't think about that cause that to happen even more than in other places.
Kevin Yancey, watching the program, he agrees with your take on Florida State. Kevin is a diehard Seminole fan. James Watson, welcome to the program. You got agents from 5 different firms watching you guys on the show. I'm excited for rates potentially dropping, but does that lead us back into a buyer frenzy with so many buyers on the sidelines waiting for rates to drop? Does that lead us back into a bonanza?
I don't think so. I think we'll have, obviously, more people come back into it. I've had plenty of clients that sort of hung out on the side now because things have gotten out of hand for them in the past couple of years. But along with the reduction in rates, bringing in new buyers, it's also going to bring in more listings, because there are a lot of people out there sitting around on their 3.5% interest rate, and they're just not willing to sell their house. They'll make do whatever unless they have to move. They'll stick with what they have until the rates come back down. So if they get back down, I think it has to be more like in the mid-5s or something like that. I think you're going to see a lot of these people that have delayed their move jump back into it, put their house on the market, and then try to buy another one.
Yeah, Jerry, I think what you just said, in regards to people waiting for the interest rate, right? That absolutely has happened. And, a few weeks ago, I talked, in fact, Jay, you were on the show, on my show, and we were talking about this. And I said, if the interest rate hits 8, we're done for the year.
Yeah.
Because when 7, a lot of people's lucky number is 7. So
yeah.
7, but when it got to 8, and then we had, it was right before Thanksgiving, and it was like, okay, we know what's going to happen here.
Uh-huh.
And then what's happened, and Jay and I have talked about this, because everybody is prognosticating that interest rates, you'll see a 6 in front of the interest rate probably within the first quarter of 2024. That's what they're saying.
Right.
What have they come down? Where are they now? 7 and
Low 7s.
Yeah, low 7s. If a 6 gets in front of it, so people right now are saying, well, why do I buy right now when there's nothing on the market? I'll wait until the interest rates have a 6 in front of them, or better yet, a 5 in front of them. So you have the buyers and the seasonality of the holidays slowing things down. I'm not so sure that I agree with Jay in regards to more listings. I think we've got a long way out of that becoming a balance again. And the reason being is that even if the interest rates are palatable, where do I go? And I want to take some of our show today talking about Jay and I have talked about before, alternative ways to kind of skin that cat.
Sure.
When you've got somebody who's just paralyzed and fearful saying, look, I'm not going to put my house on the market because I don't know where I'm going to go.
Yeah.
I had a long conversation with two college friends. We've been out of college a long time. And they were talking about there's, other than Westminster and Colonnades and Independence and you name, there's not really, a community where somebody isn't ready to do that yet, but would like to have a one-level living in a nice place and that kind of thing. And that you see the appetite for it with the way White Gables has sold.
Yeah.
Over $1 million,
right.
And a lot.
Sure.
Some of them a lot over $1 million.
Yeah.
Those things have gone like that.
Right.
I can't tell you how many of my friends are moving into White Gables because there's an appetite for that.
Seeing that with Ednam Place as well.
Yep. And so, anyway, the point being is, one, there's nothing out there for somebody that's older that wants to do something a little bit different and reduce their footprint and that kind of thing. And then two, just, they don't want to sell their house out from themselves.
Jay, well, you jump in. Anywhere you want to go. Viewers and listeners, you can ask questions. Put your questions or your comments in the comment section of wherever you're watching the show upon, and I'll relay it live on air to Michael and to Jay. Zillow, a handful of months ago, said until rates get into that 5.5% range, a lot of the homeowners who secured the sub 4% rate are going to stay on the sidelines. They will weigh kind of the scales of justice, if you may, a 5.5 versus something in the 2s or low 3s because they're sitting on significant equity and they want to put that equity in play. But, I 100% agree with Michael. I mean, we're in that boat over in Keswick. And I'm kind of looking at that 5% range here before we want to put that equity into play here. Anywhere you want to go on this topic?
Well, first of all, Michael, how dare you disagree with me? I'll start off with that. But yes, there's always going to be that issue when you're transitioning markets. Is like, if I do sell my house, where am I going to go? People have the same thing now, and they've had that same issue for a while. Since things started getting crazy, it's like if I sell my house, that's why there are so many people trying to buy the house not subject to it. But in regards to waiting, I have plenty of people that sit around. Some have been waiting for a couple years now, for a variety of reasons, can't find the right house or something like that. But the math doesn't work for people saying, it doesn't make sense for me to buy until the rates get down to 5.5%. As back in the day, when I got into mortgage business.
That was 1987.
1987, the fixed rates were like 12.5%. So it's a relative thing. These rates now are really more normal than what we've had them the past several years because they've been artificially suppressed.
Right.
But if you think about it in terms of what you're missing out on, so if I'm sitting here and saying, well, yeah, the rates are 7.5%, say, and I really would like it 5.5%, well, you can calculate the difference in that, what that payment would be. So maybe you're paying initially more than what you would like to pay, but if you're buying a $500,000 house, say, and you figure modest appreciation of 5%, fair?
5-6%. This
modest,
is where I wanted to go.
That's $25,000. That's $25,000 you missed out on. That's more than the difference in your payment. And we have a saying in the mortgage business, which is marry the house, date the rate. The house you buy, you stay with. The rate, you only keep it until the next time comes around when you can refinance it. So
I think that's such an important point that when you do the calculation and, absolutely, encourage people to find a real estate professional that they trust, find a lender that they trust, and just sit down and have this conversation, just like you're doing your financial planning for your life. That in the next year or two you want to do something, right? Sit down and really, I say all the time, get the information you need so you can make an educated decision, right? And Jay and I have talked about this, that the interest rate changing from 7.5% to 6.5% on a $400,000 loan is X amount per month, right? Over a year's time, again, on that $400,000 house, it's a $20,000, $24,000 equity bump. that equity bump is going to outweigh whatever you're paying on that monthly basis on the other thing. Plus, you're in the house that you wanted to be. You've got the tax benefits now. You can improve it because you're not renting. It's not rent's not going to go up on you. And if you get a fixed rate mortgage, you know what your mortgage is going to be. And like Jay said, if we get to a 5.5 number, and you do something now at 7.5 or whatever, in a couple of years refinance to 5.5 and you're at a less monthly amount that you've become accustomed to over the last couple of years. So
the other thing about that waiting is people tend to look at the house they could get today at this price and say, well, if I was only paying 5.5% on that, I could get this house there. But the problem is that equity you missed out on is increased price a year from now. So yes, you'll have a lower interest rate, but you'll be paying on a higher sale price.
Michael Plecker giving you props, Jay Domenic.
All right,
Michael Plecker says, Jay Domenic is one of the most knowledgeable and professional mortgage loan officers I have ever met.
Thanks, Michael.
We got Grayson, who's watching in North Downtown, right around from the corner from us. He's got a question that you probably get 36 times a week, if not more. The rate question.
Sure.
And how they could fluctuate over the next couple of quarters in 2024. With the national media now being so ubiquitous and everywhere, I feel like today's consumer, and maybe you may disagree with me, I feel like today's consumer is perhaps more sophisticated or more well-read or more following of trends because the media is so readily available now in our phones, on our hands. This question is constantly being asked. I can't imagine how many times you get this question being an officer here. So he wants your crystal ball for the next 6 months.
Next 6 months. All right.
speak into that microphone really loudly.
Well, can we hold the tape for a second?
How often do you get this question?
All the time. I mean,
Yeah.
anytime somebody's thinking about buying a house, they're getting pre-approved, something like that, what do you think the rates are going to do? Realtors ask all the time because, it's a big factor here. Now, where I think the rates are going to go, I can tell you this, the predictions in general seem to be that they're going to continue to trickle down further. I think if we're talking about next year at this time, I'd say we're probably in the low sixes. So I think probably in 6 months' time, something 6.5-ish, I think is reasonable. If it's better than that, that's fine. I mean, let me digress for just a moment and talk about the Fed and how they play into this. Okay, first and foremost, it's important to understand that the Fed does not control the mortgage interest rates. Okay, they can influence them, but the rates move all the time without the Fed doing anything. We had a recent nice drop in the interest rates. Did the Fed do that? No. Something they say may influence that market, but largely the rates are decided by one thing and one thing only, and that's the pricing on mortgage-backed securities. So that's a supply and demand thing. So when you see inflation, that works against you with the mortgage-backed securities because it's a long-term instrument. So you don't want to take a position. It's like, well, the Fed stopped raising. The rates aren't going to come down until the Fed lowers the rates. They've moved a ton without that, and vice versa. As a matter of fact, on a day that the Fed raises their interest rate, it's just as likely, if not more so, that on that specific day, the mortgage rates will drop down a little bit because it seems to be the concept of stemming the inflation. So when you see bad reports out there in the economy, increased unemployment, lower CPI, stuff like that, those things are all going to translate into the rates continuing to move down. And that's what we've seen recently, just a steady stream of reports, which seems to be inflation may be under control.
Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, I think he's absolutely right. I think we'll definitely see interest rates in the sixes. Lawrence Yun, from NAR certainly agrees with that. Lawrence Yun, and again, another really important aspect of this, going back to the supply and demand scenario, is I didn't know this until Dave Stevens, who used to be the Undersecretary of HUD and served in the Obama administration. He was the general manager at Long & Foster back in the day. Just a great guy on the real estate and CEO or whatever they call the Mortgage Bankers Association head guy. He's been on both sides of the table, right, and understands the real estate business. And he pointed out, this was a couple months ago now, that the average age for somebody buying their first home used to be 30, now it's like 33, 34. It's gone up a little bit. That age group over the next 10 years is the demographic, the highest population of people turning 33, 34 in these next 5 to 7 years is greater than it's ever been before. So all of those people who...
It's the perfect storm.
Yeah, and all those people who maybe living with their parents, or they're thinking about, they've been living with somebody, now they're going to get married, have a family, they want to buy a house, whatever the case may be. That was an interesting thing, just a side note, that when my daughter went to New Zealand after she finished college, we went over to visit her, and so many people in New Zealand live with each other until they're ready to start a family. And then they get married and find a house and, blah, blah. So she lived with, like 5 or 6 people, 2 couples and her and a couple other single people, whatever, in this really cool community. But the point being is that demand's not going to go away. And the interesting thing, going back to what you said about the perfect storm, Jerry, is that interestingly enough, people of my age or even younger, I'm 71, so say people even younger than Jay,
Wow.
Late 50s, 60, kind of thing, they're looking for the same house now. Which is the first time that's ever happened. They're looking for the same house that the young couple's looking for. They don't want the maintenance anymore. Right. They want to live in a smaller footprint. They don't want to have a big yard, but they want to have a yard. And families who want to be sort of mobile and can, go to the beach or go to the lake or, these kind of things, they want that same thing. And so all of a sudden, that's another problem that we have is land is expensive. The cost of the dirt is expensive. You can't go horizontal and be price effective.
Right.
People don't want the vertical as much, right? They compromise for the vertical, right? They'd rather have the horizontal with the little, piece of land. And so that's just another perfect storm that causes the problems with the demand and the supply, right?
Right. And specific to this area, and Jay, I'll pass it to you. Roger Voisinay giving both you gentlemen some props right now. Roger's a good man. He's going to join us on this talk show in a few days. You have the governmental red tape, if you may. Albemarle County, only 5% of the county has been allocated to development with the comprehensive plan. You also have, let's cut to the chase. This is a pretty popular and Towne area to live, with folks flooding to the area. We highlight the data science school, the Paul Manning Biotech School, the $11 billion coming to Louisa County with Amazon, Northrop Grumman pouring couple $100 million into Waynesboro. Folks are going to live on this side and probably
and Amazon
over there.
in Waynesboro.
And that's right. And let's cut to the chase. We're under inventoried. Depending on who you ask, it's millions of units nationwide. Certainly locally, we don't have a lot of small and medium-sized builders that perhaps got hit real hard in the last housing crisis. They never came back to market with building houses. Comments are coming in quickly here, which I'll get to in a matter of moments. I'll throw this to Jay. If rates potentially are dropping to the 6s or mid-6s in 2024, do we see the buyers coming off the sidelines? And do we see potentially the inspection waivers, the appraisal waivers, and people making offers well over asking price, the bidding wars again, like we saw in the pandemic?
Well, I think when the rates come down, the buyers will come out. And if the inventory is not there...
I agree, Jay.
Well, thank you, Michael. Finally, we agree on something here today. But these people have sort of been on the sidelines watching and waiting. And believe me, I've got people that have been sort of looking at a house, can't find anything, maybe at lower level price ranges. There's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of demand for stuff, sub 300,000. I mean, but yeah, I think there's going to be a little bit of problem there till the inventory comes out. These people, once people know that there are buyers out there, I think the listings will come, but not enough that it's going to become a buyer's market anytime soon. It'll still be a seller's market when things start picking up a little bit, and it will pick up in 2024. So could we see some of that craziness again? And believe me, it was crazy, unlike anything I've seen in
In your career?
Yeah.
Would you say that?
I would definitely
would say
say
that?
that.
Yeah.
Never.
Wow.
So I think, and Jay, I want you to come back to the alternative financing here. You know, we talk about trying to increase demand and answering the question, not only for Jerry, yours, and Keith's listeners, but just the overall question about how do I go about selling my home and be able to find something that I want to buy, right? And especially if we're in a market where nobody's going to want you to come in with a contract that's contingent on the sale of the home. I mean,
Right.
God forbid, right? And so I want you to kind of talk about, you know, how you counsel people in that way. But from a real estate perspective, I just want folks to know that there are ways to skin that cat, right? And one of the best ways of doing it that a lot of people don't talk about is you're in control. Okay, hello, we're in seller's market. We have buyers that want to buy your house, lots of them, and they're going to do anything. Jay talked about it earlier in the show. They're going to do anything to win the deal, right? Why aren't more people communicating to their sellers, let's make your house contingent, the sale of your house contingent on you going and finding a house that you like, that you could move to, and 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever the buyer's going to give you, and you're in control. The person who has the gold makes the rules, right? I have the house, you want it, other people want it, so I'm willing to accept your offer at whatever stupid number you're going to,
with maybe a rent back for 60 days.
No rent back. It's
good.
contingent on 2 or 3 weeks of me going out and now doing my own home search, finding the house that I can live with, maybe getting through a home inspection, whatever, and coming back and removing that sale of home contingency and making that contract in full force and effect. If I can't find that house, or I can't negotiate the deal I want on that house, I haven't sold my house from under me. I can either go back to that buyer and say, will you give me 2 weeks? Can we extend this? And if they say no, then say, I'm off the market because I'm not going to, we're totally happy here, and I'm not going to sell this out from under me and then be put in a situation where I'm in the Motel 6, or I'm joking, but you know, in some place temporarily until I can find something on my own. There's other ways of doing it, and then from an alternative financing, some of us, not all of us, there are ways to be in a position where you can go non-contingent on the house you want to buy, right? And be able to qualify for both loans for 30, 40, 60 days while you're negotiating all this. And Jay and I talk about this all the time with the agents, of making sure the agents understand that there's certain people that are financially able to qualify for both loans. That way they can go non-contingent, but they're still going to sell their house, but they don't have to sell their house.
Sure.
Right? But they've got financing in place that they can go non-contingent, whether they have it themselves or a family member or whatever. And then once they sell their house, they bring that money back into the equation.
Right, and I've seen plenty of contracts where we're going to write a contract for cash, but we really don't want to pay cash.
Right.
We don't want to liquidate these things, stuff like that. And some of them get away with it because they can put the closing out there far enough, typically 45, 60 days. That gives you enough time, if you've got a really desirable property, where you
sell
can
your house.
Yeah, just because you say you're going to buy a cash doesn't mean you have to, as long as it doesn't delay closing or cause a problem. You can't go back and say, wow, the appraisal came in low or something like that, or we've got a delay because we can't, we've got a problem with our internet lender or something like that. But
we only use local lenders here.
No
internet lenders.
That's why he mumbled internet lender.
Local lenders only.
Well, I could tell a story, but I won't take too long. But I could tell a story about internet lending that I got involved in only because I wanted to, just to sort of see what it was like. Because when I was refinancing a couple years ago, I thought, well, I'll just do it because I'm certainly equipped to do it. But it didn't go well. And the difference is, I'll just say this about it, is there is no magic secret to becoming a mortgage loan officer. Okay, you have to study and take the test so that you understand fair lending. That's largely it. Doesn't mean you know what you're doing at all. Okay, and the people that are not professionals but just get a license and answering some call center, they don't know. They can't problem solve. They can't anticipate problems. I get calls all the time from people. It's like, well, I was pre-approved, and now a couple days before closing, once it gets to an underwriter who knows what the deal is, they can't go to closing because somebody missed the boat at the beginning. So it's a risk, some people won't want to take. It's a big investment, and you don't want to lose a house because you tried to save 1/8% on the internet. So I digress too far now. I forgot.
No, that was good.
No. But talk about the folks who can, like the bridge loan product or that kind of thing, just so people have a little bit of an understanding about that.
Yeah, so a lot of times the people come, it's like, I want to buy a house. I want to sell my house, but I need to make an offer non-contingent. So we got to come up with a plan to either tap into the equity or just use what you have and then use that equity after to sell the house. So that's where it comes, the part about talking to a trusted lender up front is important, because people go off on their own thinking, well, I can do this, I can do that. And you'd be surprised how many times it happens where when it comes right down to it, they've done the wrong thing, shot themselves in the foot, and they aren't prepared to perform to the contract, or they think something will happen faster. But there are products out there where we could discuss, and we'll say, well, maybe this is the best way. Maybe you could just take the money out of your 401k. If you're going to sell your house so fast, you can replace that money without penalty. So you want to look at these things. Sometimes it's like, well, have you asked your grandparents? Is there a gift there? It's like, yeah, I wasn't afraid to ask. I was afraid to ask. Well, sometimes that's the difference between you getting the house you want or not. If you can pay cash or increase your down payment so that you qualify for both homes, that sort of thing. So it's a little bit tricky, but believe me, we did it plenty over the past few years, and still doing it now. I had somebody, oddly enough, who had a contract that was contingent on the sale of her home. And she thought she'd sell it really quickly, and indeed it went under contract in the first weekend. Okay, everything going according to plan until the buyer kind of flakes out and sort of bails. And now we've got to try to sell it again. And now I'm coming up with all sorts of, the numbers I've crunched trying to find a way to do this, bringing in other people as co-signers, liquidating this, paying this debt off, stuff like that. It was the convoluted plan I had to try to make this happen. And fortunately, at the last minute, she got another contract. So we're moving forward, and hopefully close in another week or so. But anyway, you have to plan ahead of time. It doesn't matter if you're in a position where you're selling your house or you're not selling your house, you're buying a house and trying to do it non-contingent. It should be, if I'm thinking about getting a mortgage of some sort at some point, now is the time to talk. If your decision is we're waiting till next summer, then the conversation has to be had now. On my way in here, I had a conversation with one of my clients. I've been looking for a house for several months. I haven't found what they want. But the question was, if my wife and I change our jobs, how will that affect the mortgage? Now, I'm glad he had
Absolutely.
the thought, because it would have fundamentally changed their qualifying. But people will go on their own with, I need to work on my credit for a little bit. Are you doing the right thing? I'll change this job because I'll make more money. Are you going to make more money? You may make more money, but you may not qualify with more. So the calculation of what gets counted, if you go to a job, all of a sudden it's like, hey, I'm making twice as much money, I got this great commission schedule, your income qualifying income has gone to zero because you don't have a long enough history of this over time. So the time to talk to a lender doesn't mean you have to apply and get locked into something. It just means you have a conversation, a consulting, so that you can make an intelligent plan moving forward.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, Jerry, that Jay's talking about is there's also, portfolio lenders, which Jay isn't, but somebody like Jacek Walicki over at V&B, they can do things in a different way because they be holding the mortgage or whatever the case may be. Or the other thing that I encourage folks is if they do think they're going to sell their house in the next year or two, and let's just assume that it's going to be a frenetic market, right? To go ahead now, because the lenders are making good deals on it, to get a home equity line in place way ahead of time, that you've got the equity line in place so that when you go to Jay and whatever, it's substantiated and whatever, but you're in a position, not everybody, but you're in a position at that point to use that money to put down on a house so that maybe you can do the two, the non-contingent and then selling your house, that kind of thing. And, shout out to Mike Peters' wife, Kathy, First Citizens, right, Jay?
She just retired.
Oh, never mind. She just retired. But she was incredible. I mean, she was the
Yes.
go-to person for Jay as it related to, home equity lines. And you don't have to use that money. You just have it available. And going again to talking about real estate and investment, you buy, Jay and I went last year to the UVA Real Estate Club, and we talked to probably about 50 university students. And they've been talking about commercial and return on investment and, triple nets and all these kind of things. And we just talked about buying a house. And the guy who runs the thing said it was the most informative and interactive session they had in the time that they've been doing the real estate club, because it was about them and about them buying their first house and renting out 2 or 3 rooms, and having other people pay their mortgage, building up the equity, then getting a home equity line, and then staying in the house and buying something else. Just the way that you can do that very simply, and as long as you're thinking ahead. And we didn't get out of there. I mean, they usually only go for an hour and 15 minutes. We were there for 2 hours because people coming up to us talk about, now tell us again about making a business proposal to our parents, that we'll do this shared equity thing together and, those kind of things. And so a lot of people just don't, going back to what you said, Jay, about lenders having a license, but they don't know the business. That's the same thing with real estate. Your real estate license, 120 hours, and you get all the, being able to check the boxes and get all the right answers. But when you get that person out of that with a license, you start from scratch with them in regards to teaching them what it means to be in real estate, understanding all the different ways that people can do things so that you can be the person, the go-to person that it can help them make that kind of decision. And again, everybody has to start somewhere, right? And so again, if you're thinking about the real estate business,
that question's coming in
Okay.
from Kelsey. Walk us through how someone becomes a real estate agent, just literally in the feed. And Woody Fincham, the appraiser, says passing an exam does not make one an expert. I see it all the time in the appraisal business. And he says both Jay and Michael are top-notch guys. So the viewers and listeners right on point with us. She wants to know how you go about getting a real estate.
Yeah, so mad respect for Woody. Woody is just so good in what he does, and is a reasonable guy. Some appraisers, they quite honestly, they're on an ego trip. It's all about them. They can make or break a deal, that kind of thing. And I'm just really grateful for Woody and his investment at Charlottesville Area Association of Realtors. A lot of people don't know he's on the board there. Which I'm really grateful for. But going back to the question, from Kelsey's standpoint, what I would encourage you to do is go to Mosley, Moseley Real Estate. Just Google Mosley Real Estate. I think they're the best. There are a lot of them out there, but I think they're the best. You can go online and do that class, or you can sign up for an in-person class. And there are some local in-person classes. I think Lisa Herndon.
She's a teacher.
Yes, who's the president of CAR. She teaches the principal class. I'm pretty sure that, oh my gosh, hang on a second. Russ Burns teaches it over at Realty. So you can take it in person. That doesn't mean you have to go to those companies. You may decide to do that. Or you could, go to Mosley and they have some other alternatives. But the point being is you're going to take 120 hours, and just understand it's 120 hours to then be able to regurgitate everything you learned on the state and national test. Yeah. Once you pass that test, interestingly enough, it gives you a key to take another test. Right. And the other test is done by PSI, which is kind of, if you remember your college boards, it's that kind of company that takes care of all that nationally. You go into this little place and you do your thing, and at the end of the day, you find out whether you pass or fail. The interesting thing about that is they don't tell you, if you pass, they don't tell you by how much. But if you fail, they tell you by how much.
There you go.
So you know that you only missed by 3 or 4 or whatever, but you might have made it by 3 or 4. You don't know that. You could have gotten 100, you could have gotten 80. But anyway, the key then, and this is a really important part, Kelsey, is now you've gotten yourself to a place of, okay, what do I want to do with that real estate license, right? And it may be that you just want to have it initially just to to have it, you're not expected to go in the business. Well, a lot of companies offer what's called a referral company, where you can activate your license there. You're not having to join car and all those things. But if you know people are thinking about buying or selling, you can call them, and you can call your company, and they'll refer them to an active agent, and you get paid a referral fee. So it's like supplemental income. And one of the things I tell people, if they've got a job and benefits and stuff, and they're not ready to go cold turkey, I say, go into the referral company, start finding out if you're good, if you got big ears. I'm in Shenandoah Joe's this morning on Ivy Road meeting with a friend, and I heard if I hadn't been meeting with a friend, I heard what do they call
the barista?
Thank you. The
Yep.
barista say, well, I'm not a real estate expert. Well, my ears were big enough that I heard that. Now, if I hadn't been meeting with somebody, I would have gone over and said, well, some people think that I'm somewhat of a real estate expert.
Are.
How can I be of help?
Yeah.
Right? And who knows? That person we're going to sell a house someplace or whatever. Point being is, as a referral agent, you just create a business account, a real estate account, and every referral goes in there. You don't touch it. That's not your day-to-day money. That's not your, it could be for emergency and stuff, but it's not your vacation money or whatever. It's there to build up a treasure chest, if you will, so that then if you decided you wanted to go cold turkey, you have the money in place to say, okay, I'm going to leave my job and I'm going to go do this. But beyond that, what I encourage people to do is to talk to their friends and say, who do you respect in the marketplace, companies and agents. And then I would go, if you've got time, I'd go around and have coffee with a bunch of people and just say, why'd you get in the business? Why are you with the company you're with? And then narrow it down to like 3 companies that you've heard good things about, and then I'd go interview at those 3 companies and have them talk you through what it's going to look like if you decide to come here. Because here's the thing, the important thing, Kelsey, and anybody else is interested in this, when you do this, you are not going to work for somebody. You are starting your own real estate business. Even though you're brand new, you are starting your real estate business. In my opinion, your attitude should be, I'm giving you the privilege of opening my real estate business under your umbrella. And so I want to hear about your umbrella and how that umbrella is going to help me grow my business. And anybody that's been in the business for a long time, Jerry, you see it all the time with the different people you have on the show, Keith and Yonna, Michael Plecker, whoever it might be, Caitlin Mancini, all the different people that you've had on the show. At a certain point, it's about the agent. It's no longer about the company.
Right.
And my mindset always is about, we want to create a foundation for you, and we want to get you to the place that people are calling you versus calling because you're with our company. Now, we got to stay and continue to provide the things that want to have people stay with us. But at the end of the day, somebody's calling you, whether you're at VMV Brands Real Estate or Joe Schmo Real Estate, they're not calling about Joe Schmo, they're calling about you.
Absolutely.
Right? And so the important thing is to get with the right kind of company. And then this is my bias, right? And other people feel differently, but my bias is you want to go with a company that has an incredible training program. That the companies that say, we're small, well, you're going to get this, in-person sort of experience and that kind of thing, and that's all well and good, but if the people that are doing that get busy or go on vacation or whatever, all of a sudden, you got nobody there. And so I personally think, at least initially for the first couple of years, you want to go someplace where you're getting trained a couple times a week and then sent out to apply it and then coming back in, right? And we have people at Howard that I'm grateful for this. I have brokers and agents from around the marketplace that refer people to our company because their company doesn't do that. And they say, this is what you need to do. Now, my job is once they decide to come with us, I got to keep them from the person who referred me stealing them back after we get them all trained and up and running. Yeah. But from Kelsey, your standpoint, it's very easy to go through the 120 hours, especially online. You can do it at your leisure. You can take the test. Mosley offers a 1-day prep to teach you how to take the test, which I certainly did myself. I knew that's the way I would learn it better. And then it's just about finding the right place for you in regards to how you want to do your business.
Jay, we want to weave you into the mix. Michael, that was fantastic. We'll highlight some of the viewers and listeners that are watching the program right now. Michael Guthrie is a popular guy, and he's getting some love on his Facebook page right now from your friend, William Conrad Jones.
Oh, yeah, man. Who-rad.
William Conrad Jones watching the program. Jay Domenic getting some love right now as well from his buddy, Robert A. Jones, watching the program right now. So here's a good one for Jay, and we've heard this term over the last 6 to 10 months, more than maybe I've ever heard it in my time hosting these shows and doing real estate myself, the assumable mortgage. Multiple folks are asking about the assumable mortgage. It's becoming part of the vernacular, but it's far from easy and far from popular.
It's far from what it used to be back in the day, Jay.
Right.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Thank you, Spencer, for that topic. I'll bring it up with Jay now.
Okay, so here's what assumable mortgage means. Is I've got a mortgage on my house. It's got a certain rate attached to it. And if you want to buy my house, you're allowed to take over my mortgage, my payment, my rate, and the remaining term. So in a lot of cases, at different times, that's a heck of a thing. And right now, it could be. So for instance, suppose I've got a rate of 3.5% on my mortgage.
It's an asset right now.
Right. My house now is more attractive because I can pay half the interest rate than you would get on the open market out there. But here's the problem. There aren't as many types of loans that are assumable as there used to be. And you have to jump through some hoops. Now, when I first got in the mortgage business, if somebody had an FHA loan, and there were a lot more back then, somebody could come in, even an investor, and say, I'll take over your mortgage. Okay, off we go. You just have to pay the difference between what they owe and what the sale price is. And there was no qualifying, nothing. And so that didn't last but so long. And they phased that out in the late 80s and early 90s. So if the average person has a conventional mortgage on here, it's not assumable, okay? But I always advise realtors, when you're taking a listing, find out what kind of financing they have. You might be surprised that they've been sitting on an FHA loan or a VA loan or a USDA loan. All of those types of loans, those government loans are assumable. So it could make your house even more marketable. Would I be willing to pay more for a house with 3.5% interest rate with only 25 years remaining on the mortgage? So right away, even more of my payments going towards principal. Yes. The only problem we've had, I mentioned the young lady who had a house that was contingent on the sale of her home. She had an assumable mortgage, but there's a limited number of people who are going to come in with that kind of cash, pay the difference. So two things about assumability is you have to remember that somebody has to come up with the difference in cash between the sale price and the mortgage balance. They have to qualify for the mortgage. So in this case, she had a USDA loan. Not only do they have to qualify from an income and debt standpoint, they have to be eligible under USDA guidelines, i.e. income limitations. So it could be a plus out there for the right people. It's certainly worth looking at because somebody might be coming in. Suppose I got an FHA mortgage and I've got $100,000 in equity. Somebody might be coming in thinking they're going to get a conventional loan with a large down payment. You can say, hey, rather than getting a conventional loan at 7.25% or whatever, why don't you take my 3.5%, even though it's got mortgage insurance on it, still effective interest rate is way less. So you can go ahead and assume that. So assumability is nice. Sometimes it's nicer, but it's certainly worth looking at and worth asking about if somebody has a government-insured loan.
And I would say, Jerry, just in the last month or two, beginning to see realtors using that in their listing marketing.
I've noticed that as well.
3.5% rate, 4% rate, and if nothing else, it's an attention getter. People are going to go look at that house for that reason. It may not be the house for them, but again, it's a great thing, from an agent's perspective. And Jay's absolutely right to talk to the lender about what kind of finance do they have, because but there are hoops that have to be jumped through. It's not like the old days for sure, and there's funding fees and different things like that go along with it.
There's costs associated with it and time.
Yeah, and time. If I could switch gears for a minute, Jerry,
please.
Going to something that Kevin commented about the taxes and the assessments, right?
Yeah.
That's a huge thing, right? And it's something that I've been, sort of, beating the table on for a good long while about folks who have lived in this city for a long time, maybe handed down from one family to another, whether it be Belmont or 10th and Page or wherever it might be, and somebody comes in and takes the house next to them and upgrades it and increases the value. Good for them, right? But bad for the people next door.
Gentrification.
Because of the fact of the tax assessment, to the point that somebody may freely own their house, and yet they can't pay the real estate taxes, because as a $1 million property goes up next to them, and this, this is not for this show, and hopefully next week when I'm subbing for Keith again, we'll talk more about what happened at the public hearing on the 5th. Today's what, the 4th?
Yeah, so it's tomorrow.
Tomorrow's the public hearing on
the draft zoning ordinance.
On the draft of zoning ordinance.
Yeah.
And there's my issue with it is I think that not enough data is still been in place. There's reason, I can see reasons on both sides. And on my show I had Neil on, who Neil Williamson, who's a guest on your show.
Sure.
Very reasonable, and had him on talking about it. And then yesterday or Saturday I had a guy by the name of Ray Van Doren on the show, who's a neighbor in the Rugby Avenue, Rose Hill Drive area.
Who's opposed to the DZO.
Who's opposed to it. But and he has really good reasons, to be opposed to it. And so my point on all this is, hey guys, everybody's got to get engaged. You may be for it, you may be against it, but sometime in the near future it's going to happen, and your chance of having a voice is over, right? And so I've been trying to offer, different perspectives so people could hear about that. But the main issue that I have is this whole aspect of the people that already live in these places, and all of a sudden a 3-level, 6-unit place comes in next door and increases their value. And it's not their fault that it happened, right? It's not their fault, but they're going to pay for it. And so from my standpoint, I'm not talking about people who have been here 5, 10 years, but my thought has been, and I know there's some tax breaks in the city, but my thought has been, is somebody that can verify that it's been in their family for 50 years, or pick a number, right? And I guess this is where we get back into the CFP for a minute. Okay, well, I've only been 45 years. I don't get it because you picked 50. I get that. Some people being left out. But my point being is, grandfather those people. Your taxes are not going up anymore until you sell it, and the next person buys it. The next person buys it, they go on to the effective tax rate. And I just think that just be a simple thing to do, because the house that's being built next door is going to offset what these people are having or not having to pay. And so that just in regards to something that Kevin asked about the tax assessments. I'm not sure what he meant about complementary possession. Did you understand that?
I did. He was talking about complementary seller possession is when you negotiate the sale of your house, but and Jay, you can correct me, I believe legally you're up to 60 days
rent
where
back.
you can rent back. Mm-hmm. Any day over 60 days, then it's going to make it a little bit hairy with the mortgage.
Exactly. In order for a mortgage to be considered owner-occupied, you have to occupy within 60 days.
Bingo. So we'll close with, an hour goes by when you guys are having fun here. And we have more questions, which I'm going to try to throw to you rapid fire. I would love to get, before we get off topic and go rapid fire, Michael's take on the DZO and how upzoning is going to impact Charlottesville. If you had a crystal ball, do you think it's going to breed the affordability? And Neil is watching the program. Do you think it's going to breed the affordability that a lot of folks, Neil, for instance, is suggesting?
So I'm going to probably get in trouble here.
Okay.
But I don't think it is.
I don't think it will at all.
I honestly, I understand the intention is right.
Yeah.
The intention is absolutely right. We talked about it before, supply and demand. The more available, right? But when you take a scenario that, a lot, and you break it down into 4 or 6 units,
it's more valuable.
It's more valuable,
Yeah.
but also there's the affordability component to it, that 1 or 2 of those have to be, at the was it AMI?
Yeah, area median income.
Yeah, it's got to be area median. The developer has to offset that into the other units.
Right.
Right, and that's where I feel like I may be wrong, and I'm absolutely ready to be proven wrong. But that's the data that I haven't actually seen yet, that kind of thing is going to change the affordability aspect. It's definitely going to change the availability, but it's not going to. And the other negative side to that is, as that goes up, not only is the affordability, so the neighbor has a higher tax rate. And again, Neil, you can tell me I'm wrong, or anybody else can tell me I'm wrong. But now that neighbor has a 3-story building behind them. The view or the aesthetic aspect of where they lived is changed. And I just have some. I'm not saying that it doesn't need to happen. I absolutely need to see it happen. But Roy made a really good point on Saturday. why not expand this to the county and to the university and bring everybody in? And the university, with the leasing of the land that they're going to do, that's going to be a huge thing if we can make that happen. But why can't this be part of like adding a little bit more growth area to the county, and so that there can be some more availability and creating affordability, and not just certain neighborhoods being put in this place. I do believe that, and I don't really believe Roy's in this situation, but there are people that I think are, what's the thing? It's fear mongering kind of thing that, you're going to have 7-Eleven next door to you,
Sure,
or you're going to
absolutely.
have, this next to you, and parking. I mean, one of the things in the zoning is that Rugby Avenue, you don't be able to park on one side of the street. And I thought Roy's had an interesting perspective. We're talking about a city that's trying to, be green. Are you going to borrow your next door neighbor's extension cord to plug in your electric car because you can't park on your side of the street anymore? I mean, there are a lot of things that are going into this, and I want to say this again. I think everybody's intent is right.
Yeah.
I think our city and our counties and our community want there to be affordable housing. They want there to be accessibility. I just think that some of these things, even though it's been going on for a long time, I mean, pre-COVID almost, right? When the consultants first came, I just think there's some questions that haven't been answered yet.
Christopher Ketchum giving Michelson props. He's a Howard Hanna team member right there. Jamie Clark, a Howard Hanna team member, giving Michelson props as well. We'll wind down with this. This is an interesting topic. Why don't we close with this? What are the panelists' predictions for the 2024 real estate market in comparison to a year that's transpired recently? Well, 2024, Jay, we'll close with this here.
Well,
2024 in a comparison year.
I hope I'll be able to agree with you.
Well, I hope so too, because it's going to be positive. Well, as the real estate market goes, so goes the mortgage market, unless we're in a refinance thing, which hopefully we can see some of that too. But compared to 2023, I expect 2024 to be noticeably better.
With units sold, volume you're talking? Mm-hmm. Okay, but certainly not affordability though.
No, I don't see how that's, I don't see affordability changing a whole lot. Only slightly with if the interest rates do come down, but the prices, I don't see a mechanism. We're not going to see a recession. We're not going to see a drop back in values.
No.
People are waiting. Some people are waiting for that too. It's like, I'll wait till the property values come down.
I keep saying that to people.
It's
That's
not
not going to happen
happening.
around here.
2006 is not going to.
That's not going to happen.
That was a whole different
Yeah.
thing that caused 2006, 2007. That doesn't exist anymore.
Totally.
There's not going to be a bubble. It's not going to crash. There's nothing like that in the offing. So I think the rates are going to come down a little bit. I think there's going to be more properties on the market. I think there's going to be more buyers. There's plenty of buyers out there now that'll take those and jump in. So I do think that it's going to be better. It's not going to be like it was the year before last or anything like that. But
So you
I
don't
think
see any comparison to 2021 insanity? 2022, early 2022?
No, not that kind of crazy insanity.
Okay.
I think it'll be a little nuts.
Let's
but I don't think
circle
it's gonna be
back
that
to where
crazy.
we were earlier in the show,
Sure.
right? Since we're closing up.
Yeah.
We're going to see a better market in 2024. Why? Because interest rates are going to be in the sixes. Why? Because that's going to cause more people who have been on the fence waiting to come back into the market. It will create some, multiple contracts and things like that. I think we will see that. But because of that, you're going to see an increased amount of sales, right? And you're going to see increased amount of volume, because I agree with Jay as well and you that we're going to continue to see a conservative. We're not going to see 10, 15% appreciation, but we're going to see 5, 6, 7% appreciation. And so but with the interest rate being at 6.5, even though we've already talked about this in the show, it doesn't matter. In the psychological aspect of things, that okay, it's at 6.5%, so that I can afford that 5 to 6%.
It makes an impact.
It makes an impact, and
Yeah.
therefore, I think the momentum that's going to happen into the first quarter will continue on, and especially if everybody's saying right that by the end we'll be maybe in the low sixes, and by 2025 we're back in the fives.
Time will tell. You, Jeff, fun?
Yeah, great.
You're great, Jay.
I always feel comfortable sitting around talking. Somebody said, "Hey, come on and speak to this." It's like, what's topic? It's like, I don't know. We'll wing it. So
You did great.
thanks. I
Jay
appreciate having
Domenic,
me.
guys, he's fantastic. Michael Guthrie is a pros pro. Maybe a sneak peek of what you have planned for your second iteration of Real Talk?
I'm hoping that we're going to, if I can get the right people, I'm hoping that we're going to have a conversation about the zoning and as it relates to the public hearing, what people heard at the public hearing. Did it move the needle in any way? And then also, and you may know, but when is this going to happen? I mean, when will the city council finally say, okay, we're going to vote on it in this day? I think we're getting close.
I think we're getting very close. Neil Williamson thinks it'll happen before the end of the calendar year.
There you go.
He says more housing everywhere for everyone. Time will tell. Certainly Natalie Ostrin, her term starts in January. She replaces Leah Puryear on city council, and Natalie is even more pro-housing than Councilor Puryear. So some folks have speculated they may wait till next year to get Natalie Ostrin's vote and take in on the dais. Gentlemen, this was easy. You guys are fantastic. Michael Guthrie, guys, Jay Domenic, Real Talk with Keith Smith. For those that are wondering, Keith Smith is out for 2 weeks in St. Martin with his family and extended family, celebrating the holidays early. He is going to be back in the middle of December, but in the meantime, we got Michael Guthrie, we have Roger Voisinay, we have Woody Fincham. We have some of the best in real estate joining us on the program and on the set. Judah Wickhauer, thank you to you.
Yeah,
the
thanks,
show
Judah.
is
Thanks, Judah.
archived at realtalkwithkeithsmith.com and wherever you get your podcast. And the I Love CVille show, guys, is up in 1 hour. Thank you for joining us, and take care.